Hello and welcome to 2024, and welcome back to the Diablo. My name is Blake. This is Y2K. It's a pretty winter day in Florida at the boat ramp. It's a good time to be out driving cars. So, I wanted to take some time today and drive the car and talk to you guys about why I think these cars are undervalued. So let's go ahead and get in and start it up and see what we can do here. Doors up. In the cockpit we go. Making sure everything looks good on my camera. Put the key in. I've already warmed it up. Let the fuel pumps prime. Beautiful. Tried to make this video once and a plane flew over. It was actually a nice biplane, but couldn't hear me at all. That's what happens when you try to make videos. You don't notice these things until they are issues. So, everything's up to temperature. I'm gonna make it out of this residential area first. Gearbox is still cold, so we will actually warm that up a little bit here. But the topic of today's video is why has the Diablo, specifically these earlier cars and the VTs, why haven't they gone up in value as much as, say, a Countach or a Murcielago, or like an F40, you know, which this car actually kind of was compared against a lot. It's not as fast, but it was in the conversation and they cost similar money. So it's kind of interesting to see why cars go up the way they do and why people feel inclined to pay the amount of money they do for certain vehicles. You know, the Countach, for example, has gone up. You know, I think a cheap Countach is $500 now, and the really nice one's over $1 million. The Wolf of Wall Street car just sold for, was it $1,655,000 with commission? I just watched Tamarian's video on Curated this morning, talking about that sale. Obviously that was a famous car, but nonetheless kind of speaks to the top end of the Countach market right now. It's one of the only turns in Florida right there. Too bad it's in a neighborhood. Get around this dump truck. So yeah, it's interesting to watch. I bought this car in 2019. I got what I felt was a pretty amazing deal. No one had really started looking at these yet. I grew up owning one of these, and poster on the wall story, read about them in all the different magazines and all the comparisons. And you know, the Diablo has a lot of accolades that maybe people haven't thought of or aren't aware of. But the biggest one is this was the first Lamborghini to ever break 200 miles an hour. And that seems like a pretty big deal to me. It's also a lot more usable than a Countach, and I think it looks better. But, you know, I'm not exactly of that era. I was born when they were being made, and I was a few years old when they quit making them. I was born in '86. So, but I think this car is sleeker and just overall prettier than the Countach. This was designed by Gandini, you know, the world famous designer for Lamborghini and other brands. If you ever want to have some fun, go look up all the cars he designed. The Zeta Marauder was one of them, and that's a pretty special car, the 16-cylinder transverse, which was actually supposed to be, you know, the shell of that car was what he originally intended for the Diablo. Speed bumps. due to go up a lot more than what they have so far. Well, that sounded good. Got a Tesla, apparently not on autopilot at the moment because that was a Ricky Bobby lane change. Pretty day. Got some people on their boats. Looks like you should jump in, but it's cold, so I would not do that. So, the Diablo, like I said, broke 200 miles an hour. It's designed by Gandini. It was the successor to the Countach. The doors go up. It's got a gated V12 manual. All the recipes for the car worth well over $500,000 or even $1 million, depending on which other variant of an Italian car with this kind of setup. F40's over $2 million, and climbing. F50's $4.5, $5 million. This car is in those conversations. Some of that stuff is more rare. But at the end of the day, they didn't make a lot of Diablos, and specifically they didn't make a lot of the rear-wheel drive first-gen cars, like mine with the side mirror painted in gray. That's usually a telltale sign. They did paint some of them at the dealership, I think, and maybe they eventually started painting a few at the factory towards the end. But, they only made this car from like 91 to 93 and a half, technically. It's the most basic. It's got the big cliff dash, which some people say is ugly, and I think it just has some character to it. It does affect your visibility a little bit, but not as much as you would think if you're the appropriate height. But this is a rear-wheel drive, no nannies vehicle. And after that, the VT was four-wheel drive. So this is, and it had power steering. This doesn't even have power steering. There's a lot of traffic today. But yeah, it's got all the makings of a car that should not be 250 to 300,000, but should be more. And I think now would be a great time, if you can do it, to buy one. You can drive it, you can use it. The clutch is a little heavy, the steering is a little heavy, but that's also part of what makes it great. And because when you start looking at the values of, Countach, like I said, is 500 to $1 million. LP640 and Mercy's, LP640 is maybe 7.8 to a little over $1 million. Just a base Murcielago gated is 500,000-600,000, probably more like 6, I think. EB110s and F50s and all that are obviously getting up there as well. I think EB110s are in the ones, but it's surrounded by some good company, and I'm not quite sure, honestly, why it's been skipped over compared to these other cars. I'm kind of glad it has been, because that's what enabled me to buy one a few years ago. And I figured that, as time went on, that was probably my last time to be able to buy this car for a reasonable amount of money. I'm not always right, but